This is real. Dennis Pitta, BYU tight end great, Super Bowl champion in the NFL, is back with us on the show. Dennis, welcome back to BYUSN.
Hey, guys. I am just elated that we finally found time to get me on here.
Listen, once fall camp starts, we're going to be pretty busy. So I think that you should cherish this.
Jerem, I hope you don't have a terrible mustache still as we speak.
No, I shaved it. For you mainly. Like, I was like, okay.
You know what gives me a lot of satisfaction right now?
Huh.
Knowing that every time you have to drive by the stadium, you now have to look up at a giant picture of me.
Who'd you pay off to get up there, dude?
I had to pull a lot of strings, but there was one thought in mind getting me up on that stadium. It was Jerem having to drive by. Hopefully you have to drive by each day you come into work.
I don't drive by that, luckily. Even if I did, I would change my route. And you know I would.
You did it, Dennis.
You did it.
You did it,
Congratulations.
Man.
You got on the stadium, and you got on the show. You win.
Hey,
Thank you.
By the way, when did you find out that you were on a banner? How did you find out about that?
Well, Tom Homo reached out to me probably a few months ago and just asked me if I'd be okay with it. Because there's branding and stuff like that. And I think the Deseret First Credit Union's part of that whole thing, so they had to get my okay with it. And, I was okay with it. Me looking down on Jerem every time he drives by the stadium, that's a huge positive for me.
Your head's never been bigger, Dennis, literally.
Never. It never has.
And I believe it's Mountain America Credit Union, just so we make sure we're good.
Okay.
Yeah. Accuracy's never been your strong point, Dennis. It's all good.
It hasn't.
Okay, 32 days away from Arizona, but more importantly, we're breaking down the quarterback situation. You went into the 07 season in a spring ball where there was a competition, but you came out of that knowing that it was Max. It was Max Hall, Cade Cooper transfers, Brendan Gaskin stays on. He's like, I'm going to be the backup. It's all good. What do you think it's like for these guys now, in your experience in football, not knowing who the starting quarterback is going into a fall camp?
Well, it's the most important position in football, and so all eyes will be on these quarterbacks. And you mentioned 2007. We had those three quarterbacks. We didn't know who was going to be the starter, but early on in camp, it was easy to tell who the best quarterback was out of those three. And, Max was just head and shoulders, in my opinion, more talented and a little bit better than those guys. And I have a ton of respect for those guys. Brendan Gaskins will probably give me a hard time now for saying that. But, it was pretty clear. Even though they hadn't named a starter right away, it was clear who that starter was going to be. So I think early on in camp, they're going to know who the guy's going to be. And listen, Tanner hasn't been there all of the offseason. He's done some individual stuff, and I know he's been in there a little bit, but this is when we're really going to see what he's made of. He's in great shape. From all accounts and everything I've heard, he looks great. And so, it'll be an interesting race, and it's going to be certainly one that everybody will be paying attention to.
At what point did Max Hall take that starter role and then take on the major leadership role that he had for BYU football?
Well, I think Max is one of the best leaders I've ever played with, and I've played with some really good leaders. But Max was a leader on the field. He was a leader off the field. He was a leader in the weight room. He was a leader in every aspect of the game. And, it made it easy for us because we could just fall in line, and he was so competitive and wanted to win so bad. And every time we took the field, we knew that we were getting his best effort and that we better give him our best effort because that's what he demanded. And so that's what great leaders are about. You better give them your best effort, and they demand that. And so I think you have to have that out of the quarterback position. So hopefully one of these guys will step up. Hopefully one will emerge early in camp, and they can take that leadership role because having a leader at quarterback is essential. And when you don't, your team's not going to be very good. That's just the reality of the situation.
Jason Shepard is tweeting and driving, which is super dangerous. But he just tweeted, "I'm literally driving by this right now, and it's a picture of you at the stadium." So yeah, Jason's all over it. Okay, we've been talking about the timing of when BYU should figure out who the guy is. Like, how quickly do you think BYU needs to figure that out here with 3 weeks to go of fall camp and 1 week of prep for Arizona?
Well, you don't have a lot of time, but I think it's not a decision you can force. I think it has to happen somewhat organically over the first few weeks of training camp. And so, you hope that early on a guy emerges. Like in our case in 2007, Max was clearly the guy coming out of those first few weeks. And so it was easy for the coaches to name a guy. and for us to get behind that guy. But you never know. A lot of times in these quarterback battles, one guy doesn't emerge, and it makes it really difficult for coaches and players and everybody to get behind somebody. And I think if that's the case, it's going to be difficult for this team to do well, especially early on.
If you were to pick a starting quarterback right now and project that, okay, he's going to be the guy on September 1st for Arizona, who is it for BYU?
Well, for me, I think it's a difficult question because you have Joe Critchlow, who I think they look at right now as number one on their depth chart, simply because he was the guy at the end of last year who finished the season as the starter. Also, the offseason, I think he was looked at as the number one quarterback. And so going into training camp, that's probably where he's going to be. Now, I'd be surprised if Tanner Mangum didn't really push him for that number one spot. But then you have to look at Zach Wilson. I think he potentially has the biggest upside of all of them, just because of his age, where he's at in his career, his size, his arm, all of those different things. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's Joe Critchlow, and I think everybody else has to kind of push him and try and earn their spot beyond that. So we'll see how it plays out.
Are you retired or what?
That's a great question and very eloquently put. I'll put it this way. I have as good of a shot as Jerem of playing in the NFL next year.
So no shot.
Take that as you wish.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you haven't announced, like, I'm done. We wanted to do this, like, emotional Sarah McLachlan, I Will Remember You montage with Dennis Pitta highlights. And we can't do it until you say, I'm done.
You know, I don't know if I'm – well, if you're expecting that moment, you're probably not going to get it. I don't think I'm going to be calling a press conference to announce my retirement. I think if I did that, everybody would be like, well, didn't he retire like a year ago?
You could do it right now on this show, Dennis.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that, but I think officially I don't know if I'm officially retired. I think by the NFL standards, if you're out 1 year, a full year, which I have been now as of last month, they put you into the retirement status. So I might be in that grouping now. So you can call me retired.
In the meantime, you are calling 8 games as a broadcast personality for the Baltimore Ravens, which you seem to really enjoy, and we want to get your insight into a couple of former BYU guys on the Ravens roster right now. What kind of chance, first of all, does Kai Nakua have to make Baltimore's 53-man roster?
Well, first and foremost, I have just so much respect for you guys that I want to follow in your footsteps in whatever you're doing. So that's why I ventured into this broadcast. That's right. That's why I ventured into this broadcasting role. And yeah, fortunately, I do get to do some more games this year and continue that. And it's been a lot of fun, and it allows me to stay connected to the team and to everybody and kind of keep up with what's going on. So I'm actually doing a game this week. We play in the Hall of Fame game against the Bears on Thursday, so I fly to Canton, Ohio tomorrow, and I'll do that game. So we'll get a good look at Kai Nakua and Bronson and all those guys. But I think, it'll be interesting to see how their camp plays out because from what I've heard, Bronson's playing a little bit different role in that defense. The Ravens defense has always been a 3-4 defense, a little bit of a modified 3-4, and he's playing a little bit more of a stand-up linebacker from what I've heard. And, they want to get him on the edge a little bit more, allow him to use his pass rush ability. He's always kind of played that 5 technique in that defense, which is more on the interior. And so they're trying to see how versatile he is in some of those roles. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out through the preseason. But Kai Nakua is a guy who, he's really a wild card on this roster. I think his best shot to make the team is in special teams. And if he's able to be a consistent contributor, he will definitely make that roster. And listen, I think Kai's a really talented player, and I wouldn't be surprised if through the preseason he really impresses some people in that building and makes a name for himself as a safety as well.
Dennis Pitta with us on BYU Sports Nation. Dennis, thank you for making time for us.
That was the real issue. It wasn't us. It was you.
Yeah, you guys have been putting on a front like I'm trying to get in there and you don't have time for me, but it's really been the other way around.
And we're working on a 40-foot banner for Jerem to hang up in Studio B as well.
My head's big
when
enough.
They take it down from the stadium, Jerem, I'll give that to you. You can hang it off the back of your house.
Yeah, I'll hang it off the back of my house. That would be epic.
Dennis, great stuff, man. Hey, enjoy the trip to Canton, Ohio, and have a great call. We'll talk to you again soon.